75.1, it's our Diamond Jubilee episode. When you get to 75, that's freaking diamond. Okay.
All right, so this is a close-up of the snake. And now someone asked a question, how I became an artist, which is a very vague question. Basically, I studied for 6 years where I drew the figure almost every day and sculpted the figure and painted the figure. And then I got so good at it that people hired me to teach, and I have been scraping by ever since. And also, most of my technique I sort of invented. I had a teacher for marble carving named Memo Memovic and a teacher for perspective named Gary Meyer. But everything else I kind of taught myself, and that's how I became an artist. There you go.
All right, on to the topics. We got a bunch.
We can talk about the snake though, Lance?
Oh yeah, the snake. We started off the picture with the snake, which is part of the overall painting, because we figured out that I don't know that you need to put the reference material in. Jesus, now you're blowing my whole deal here.
Can I ask you something?
That people are supposed to think that I painted from a live snake.
When Jews reference Jesus, is that just like an expression, or do you believe in Jesus?
No, it's just...
Did I say Jesus?
You did.
Well, no, I took your Lord's name in vain. I don't believe in Jesus. Although
in Sunday school...
Rick has to answer the question for me. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, did you go to Sunday school for Jews?
No, I went to Saturday school for Jews. Right? So
they had a thing. They taught us about Jesus in Sunday/Saturday school.
Would you like to answer the question? How do you? Well, you tell us. Hold forth. Hold forth.
Jews are taught in religious school that Jesus was a great man, but that he wasn't the Son of God. That he wasn't holy. He was just a guy with some insights into stuff.
Great prophet.
Yeah.
How about you, Lance?
No, I would go a little further. I would say that Jesus is a bodhisattva, which means he probably had some magical powers, but I think that everybody is Jesus, which is a very, very mystical concept that you have to be on LSD to understand. But I think everybody has... I think the story of Jesus is the story of the true nature of humanity, that we're all part of God and have a divine quality in us. And so the story of Jesus is true, but not in the way that most Christians imagine it is.
Even the people in the caravan?
Hold on. Also, one more thing. Don't do LSD. It's a pain in the ass drug. It lasts for like 17 hours, and you're sick of it by hour 2 or 3. But it goes for another 14 after that. And
I've been doing LSD before every show.
Oh, well.
So if the folks in the caravan are Jesus, why do you want to turn them away, Lance?
Well, you know, everybody has a divine spark. I think even Hitler had a divine spark. They're two different things. You can commit crimes and still have a divine spark. Because I believe that on a mystical level, on another plane, we all have this archetypical kind of godlike quality to us, and that we've taken on a fleshy body, doesn't mean that we don't commit sin doesn't mean that all of us have to be worshipped. Because, let me put it this way, there is, in Buddhism, they say that everybody is already the Buddha. That on some level, all of our consciousness is already completely enlightened, but none of us behave that way. So you still have laws that you break and that you keep. You still lead normal lives.
Well, you can't be the Buddha in LA because you have to tell other drivers who are all assholes to fuck off. You know, that's not Buddha nature.
Yeah, and I mean, how could you drive in LA if you didn't do that? So yeah, Rick has explained my position thoroughly. Thank you.
Again.
All right, let's do caravan update.
So
caravan started with 4,000, grew to 7,000.
Be in the pose.
Is now in southern Mexico and is still like 7-8 weeks away from getting to America. The size of the caravan, reports vary, but it may have dwindled to 3,000 or 4,000. Mexico has offered asylum to 3,000 out of the caravan, but some of the caravan wants to press on to try to get to America. Trump and Republicans, running in the midterms, which are now 8 days away, have been trying to make a big deal out of the caravan. Trump was kind of bummed out that horrible news of other horrible stuff happened to distract from the caravan. In the past week, we've had what is arguably the largest mass assassination attempt in American history, and what is definitely the largest mass slaughter of Jews in U.S. history.
And Rick put it in such a way that it sounds like it didn't bother Trump one bit.
No, Trump.
In fact, he was disappointed because it changed the news cycle. Is it possible that he was disappointed, but that he, at the same time, thinks that this takes the news off of positions that will help the Republicans? I mean, I think you can be both.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he wasn't mad at, he was sad and mad at the mass murder of Jewish people. And he didn't comment that was distracting from the caravan. He commented that the bomb stuff was kind of distracting from the caravan, I think.
Okay.
But I don't know. You want to move on because we got a zillion topics.
Do you want to talk about the caravan?
By the way, did you finish your talk about the snake lights?
Oh, the snake is the symbol of. The snake is associated with Moses, the snake and the staff, and the reason is that. Moses' staff turned into a snake as a way of intimidating Pharaoh, and he also sculpted a metal, I think it was bronze, snake on a large pole that was supposed to frighten away the serpents from the Jews when they were in the desert, so they wouldn't get bit. And if you read the story of Moses, there is a sort of a strange reference to snakes and staffs and poles. And so, realizing that, I'm looking at this guy emerging from some beyond as a wanderer with a staff, and I thought, what could be the most interesting possible staff? And then I realized, what if I could wrap a snake around the staff? Now, it also came to me in a variety of ways that this painting is really about Moses. And I'm going to call the painting Lawgiver because what Moses did was he brought the first laws to humanity, the first elaborate system of laws, but these were based on how to understand what they believed God's morality was. So in other words, here is what God wants. This is the way the universe is ordered, and this is how we live. These are the laws we follow to be in harmony with God's wishes. And I realized that Rick is a physicist. I'm painting a portrait of a physicist, and that physics is a modern way of trying to understand the laws of the universe. So really, anytime humanity has tried to understand the laws of the universe, whether it's God's laws of morality or man's understanding of physics, it's still a matter of genius coming into the mind of an individual person and sharing it with the rest of humanity. And that this message that goes through this lawgiver's mind is this insight, I think, is the same kind of insight in a way, whether it's spiritual or intellectual. It all takes place as a message from the beyond through the vessel of the human mind. So I thought, why don't I call this painting The Lawgiver? And I have a lot of symbols in the painting of man trying to understand the universe from the very beginning. And I will elaborate and elucidate more about that as we continue in our Rick versus Lance versus Rick.
A snake peed on me in 4th grade. But back to the caravan.
Is that true?
Yeah. Somebody brought they had somebody from some place come and show exotic animals to the class, to the kids, and I'm like, what's that? And it turned out to be the snake's like penis bump, and it peed on me.
Wow.
So. Well,
it just goes to show you that the snake is definitely possessed of great wisdom.
Yeah. So I have a couple issues with the caravan being a huge threat in that, people talking about the caravan pouring over the U.S. border. I don't think anybody pours over the border. I think they get stopped for the most part. And and Mexico's taking 3,000, so say that leaves 2,000 people who still want to try to get in. Even if they did somehow manage to pour over the border, which they won't, they'll get stopped. But 2,000 people is only one day's legal immigration into the U.S. 2,000 people enter the U.S. as new legal immigrants after, a years-long process of being vetted every day. So 2,000 people from this caravan getting in would be less than 1/3 of 1% of the number of people we take into the U.S. legally. So it's not like these couple thousand people would upend civilization. Now that leads to another topic we were going to talk about.
Wait a minute, I want to respond.
Okay.
I've noticed that over the year of our discussions, you very often diminish a point by saying that it's only 1/10 of 1% of the American population, or it's really not that big, because if you do the math, there are 330 million Americans, and there's 2,000, now you're saying legal immigrants every day, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a fundamental misunderstanding of how how these things work. The reason is that when you talk about the Vietnam War, for example, we lost 50,000 men, and I think we, at that time, were losing, I don't know, maybe in car accidents, maybe we're losing 20,000 a year.
Maybe 40.
Yeah, yeah. Or when we fought Germany and Japan in World War II, I think we lost 400,000, but we probably lost that many or far more with heart attacks and cancer.
Yeah.
So the issue is never the actual number alone, because when you have a social event, either an invasion like what's happening now from south of the border, or a war, not the same number of people die, but the number that do die are tremendously significant in their impact. So I don't think you can ever look at these things just based on math.
No, but it's one component.
Well, but it really isn't, because if what is happening is we're establishing a precedent. We're saying that if you have the gumption to walk up to the border, America is too confused and politically correct to stop you.
Yeah, but that's not the case. They're not going to pour over the border.
Well, but they certainly will if we don't stop them.
Well, but I mean, we do stop them. We make a practice of stopping people trying to cross the border.
Yeah, but actually we don't. I mean, Obama let a lot of people come up. When those kids were coming up, he just said, "Oh, they're just kids, so we better let them in."
So how many of those kids?
Thousands of them. I don't know the exact number.
All right, but I mean,
but I know at least several thousand made it
apparently,
in, and and they're still here.
This is supposedly the largest such caravan in history, but the caravans happen at this time every year when summer's over.
Oh, well, then if it happens every year, then we've got nothing to worry about.
Well, no, but I mean, we have policies in place, and they're certainly being more strictly enforced under Trump, but like 99% of asylum requests get shot down.
Okay, I know, but that still doesn't mean anything. It's a meaningless number. What I'm trying to tell you is that a country that can't say, that is so pathetic that it can't say, don't even try this because it's never going to work, and that's what the Democrats want, that country has effectively no border.
Yeah,
and that's what you want, because you're already making excuses. You're saying, well, it's only a small percentage.
Well, we turn away.
Well, just get to the point, Rick. Are you happy about it? Would you let them all in?
No.
So you wouldn't let them all in, but just a month ago you were telling me you wanted to abolish ICE. I was there.
Well, that doesn't mean that whatever I said about ICE, I mean, we have a border patrol.
So you want to have a border patrol, but you don't want to have ICE?
Maybe if ICE is a bunch of Yahoo. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I'm sure they're very stylish and cool people, very avant-garde in their taste.
What?
Well, what do you mean a bunch of yahoos? They're going to be ICE, whoever ICE is.
If ICE is going to be like, I mean, we need people to enforce the border.
You just told me that we shouldn't have ICE. You told me that a month ago, that you thought ICE sucked.
Well, if ICE is going to be a bunch of guys who unnecessarily viciously enforce. I mean, wasn't ICE formed under Homeland Security?
I believe we've had an ICE probably for decades.
No, it wasn't called ICE. It was the Border Patrol.
No, you have to have two types of border patrol. You have to have one that's on the border, and then you have to have people that operate inside and actually investigate. I mean, Eisenhower was the first he had a force that started deporting illegals from San Diego. And,
Operation Wetback.
30
Yeah.
seconds, guys. We've got one next time. We should move on.
All right, let's go. All right. Let's move on to a related topic, which is...
Well, no, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Look, I get a vote.
Okay, all right.
I have a vote. And I thought about you all week. And it
Thanks.
really bothers me because I don't think you give a flying fuck if these 14,000 people come in.
14. When did 7 go to 14?
It went to 14 according to Mexican newspapers. Maybe it's gone down.
Yeah,
But my point is that if they were to march right up the border, you would say, come on.
No, I wouldn't.
You told me last week you wanted them all to have lawyers and hearings. You were all excited.
Well, that's what you do.
You were all excited to see if they were refugees.
Well, that's what you do when people come to the border.
Not if they've gone through a peaceful country. If somebody leaves a war-torn area like Honduras and they make it to Mexico, then they're no longer a refugee.
That's weird logic, but
No,
okay.
no, but wait a minute. That's international law.
Okay, I didn't know that. All right, fine.
Now listen to me. If you are in one country and you are a refugee from war, and you're in France, and you get over the border into Switzerland, you're no longer a refugee by international law. But then if you decide, okay, I've gotten into Switzerland, now I'm going to go on ahead to Germany, then you have no business being there. Your rights as a refugee are over. So these people don't have any rights as refugees.
So as long as Mexico's there as a buffer,
Right.
nobody has any right.
No, they don't deserve lawyers. They don't deserve any kind of hearings. They've already they've already freed themselves from the war-torn region that they needed to escape from.
So
If there was a war, and there isn't, they're economic migrants.
Well, it sounds like so that nobody should be able to, I mean...
You could be okay, here's how it works. If Canada was in a war, not
But
poverty...
they're not. We're surrounded by peaceful countries.
No. But the point is that to be a refugee, you have to be a refugee from war. You can't be a refugee from crime. Because there's crime.
According to Jeff Sessions.
No, because there's crime everywhere, Rick. This is international law. It has to be an actual war, or you have to be a persecuted minority. It can't just be the people next door to me are drug dealers, so I'm a refugee. Doesn't that make sense, Rick? I'll give you an example. The Jews, when the Jews left Germany, the ones that were able to escape, they were refugees. They had refugee status. But if somebody leaves Brazil because they can't get a job and they go to Argentina, that's not a refugee.
Okay.
So none of these people have refugee status because, one, they're not leaving a war-torn region. Two, they're not being persecuted because of things out of their control, because of their race or gender. Three,
but their families are getting killed.
Well, but my family could get killed if they showed up in this neighborhood at the wrong time. That doesn't make them refugees.
It makes them people who want to get the F out of their...
Well, they may want to get the F out of their place, but that doesn't mean they're refugees. According to international law, you're not a refugee because you come from a dangerous area. That would mean that the entire population of Brazil could go to America because Brazil is dangerous. South Africa is dangerous. There are dangerous places in the world.
There are more dangerous parts of each of those countries.
Right, but that doesn't make them refugees. You have to be a refugee from...
What you're kind of making an argument is that nobody who comes up through Mexico...
Unless they were Mexican and Mexico was in a civil war. If Mexico was in a civil war and there were tanks blowing up villages and there was fighter planes strafing the roads and people put their clothes on their backs and they managed to hide during the daytime and run at night.
What you're saying is you want zero out of these people.
None of them have a right. As soon as they hit Mexico, they're free of whatever thing was happening to them. The Honduran gangs are not chasing them into northern Mexico.
All right, so
So why shouldn't you just use logic on this and say that's not international law? They're not refugees, so they don't get a hearing.
I say give them a hearing.
But that's not the practice of the world.
But that's been our practice.
No, it hasn't been. We accept refugees from war-torn countries. For example, Iraq.
So,
during the Iraqi war, there was civil war. We were taking Iraqis and Afghanistans into the.
But people have been coming up to our border.
Yes, because of
ever since we had an enforced border, and saying, "Will you let me in?" And we do something administratively with every one of those people.
I don't know about that. I think most of them get in and just. They used to have something called catch and release, where what would happen is if they caught you, and a lot of them they don't catch, but if they caught you, they would say, "Okay, come back in 6 months and we'll have a hearing." And guess what? 90% of them never come back.
So
they become Americans.
So
they become Democrats.
That doesn't. What I have, something happens administratively to everybody who gets caught at the border, who approaches the border.
Right. They are given a hearing a few months in the future, and they don't show up.
Now, sometimes it's catch and release. Sometimes it's been other stuff.
Well, we've changed it from catch and release.
But it wasn't always catch and release either.
No, it wasn't. I mean, there were
But
times...
it was always something administrative. It was
well, no. I mean, there were times when we just said, "Get the hell out of here." We put them on a bus and drove them back. Or we put them in jail. Then Obama said, "Let's give them all a hearing." And then they didn't show up for the hearings. So essentially...
What percent didn't show up?
Apparently, I actually knew you were going to ask that question.
All right, so you researched it.
So I remember it. I didn't... I hate researching stupid questions, but it's something like 90%, 85%. It is well beyond the majority. Because why? You snuck over the border. Why would you show up and say, "Hey, I'm here.
All right, fine.
Can I stay?"
Fine. Now let's talk about this other, because this leads to this other topic, and we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. So last week you said that there's a study out of Yale that says that we have 22 million undocumented aliens.
On the low 16 and on the high 29 million.
Somewhere in there. A range, but a range that's higher than what the government cites is roughly 11.3 million. So I said I'd take a look at the report and see what I think, and if I thought it was, had some validity, I would say so. So I read, not the whole report, but I read through it, and then I read some articles on it, and I'd say there's a chance there's some validity, but it's kind of, given that you've got, that the people you're trying to count are reluctant to be, detected in many cases, it's hard to get an exact number. It's like measuring the size of the universe, where you can't directly just take a yardstick or a tape measure and measure the width of the universe the way you can with a room. It's indirect. You can't get to the end of the universe to measure how big it is. So you have to develop indicators. You have to find things that you think, like some stars have a fairly uniform brightness, and you look for those stars and you see how their brightness fades. Some galaxies have fairly uniform, so you develop kind of a ladder of measurements that let you guess at the size of the universe. And so each of these, the report that says 22 million plus or minus 7 million, and the report that says 11.3 million plus or minus, each use indicators to try to estimate how many illegal aliens there are. And the 22 million one attempts to actually count the number of people passing over the border in each direction. here's how many people came through, here's how many people left, and do that from 1990 until now. And then the 11.3 million estimate attempts to do the same thing and uses the back and forth over the border thing, plus some other indicators like, how many kids are registered whose parents are not citizens, and some economic effects, and everything is, it's trying to measure stuff indirectly because you can't get a direct measurement.
What are you measuring there, Lance?
Measuring the width of his legs.
Okay. And one critique I read of the 22 million that I find legit, because it reminds me of what happened when I worked in bars, is that in the 90s, apparently there was a lot more back and forth of immigrants over the Mexican border, that it wasn't, things were not as heavily policed during certain periods of the 90s, and people went back and forth a lot, which can lead to overcounting, that sometimes that there's a risk that people would be overcounted. And this reminds me of one of my jobs at the door of bars was to stand there with a clicker counting people in and out, and it was a pain in the ass because like some people would go in and out like 5 times because they were doing coke in the parking lot or drinking shots of peppermint schnapps in their cars so they could get drunk for cheaper than it would take by paying for drinks. So I believe that's a legitimate possible problem with that study. But I kind of agree with the idea of each of the studies. The study that comes up with 11.3, the study that comes up with 22 million plus or minus 7 million, that those all have a certain amount of believability, and it's hard to pin down the number. So there you go.
Well, my understanding is that the one that came up with 11 million relied on things as ridiculous as asking people, are you here legally? And expecting to get an honest answer.
Yeah, but it also relied on other stuff.
I don't believe it one bit. I also think that the newer studies that are less biased, in my opinion, rely on things like remittances. That is, when people are mailing money back to Mexico, it relies on the number of school children that are enrolled all of a sudden.
Yeah, but so does the other estimate.
No, I think it doesn't. I don't think it does.
I think each of them
I don't think it relies on remittances, school children,
but
people dying, death certificates.
Right, but each of those, each study, each estimate is based on a bundle of indicators.
Okay.
And one bundle of indicators and one way of doing the math comes up with 22 million plus or minus, and the other comes up with 11.3, and they each have a certain believability in my mind.
Okay, well,
but it's a hard to pin down number.
This particular study is, let me put it to you this way, and this is an argument from authority, so it's never good to argue saying experts believe it, because experts can be wrong. But this study is considered more reliable than the earlier 11 million.
By whom?
Well, I did not have a chance to read the study and compare it with the study by the government that came up with the 11 million. And I'm not really qualified, and you may not be either. But the point is that there are hundreds of organizations that I saw, maybe not hundreds, but I found hundreds of entries. This organization's quoting it, this organization. liberal organizations saying 22 million, conservative. In other words, you may not have accepted this study, but it looks like the majority of people are accepting this, that this is going to become the new, most advanced study. And it was made, one of the things about the study is that it was made specifically to address some of the criticisms from the earlier study, which relied on things like, are you here legally? A questionnaire. Like I remember specifically, they sent out questionnaires, are you an American citizen? You know? And this one is dealing with things that really can be tracked, like birth rates in areas, death rates, money sent back to Mexico, people caught on the border, numbers of people in prisons. So it was a lot more comprehensive.
Here's an interesting thing. If it really is 22 million instead of 11 million,
less crime.
Less than the crime rate for, is per
No,
capita.
go ahead, make your point. I stepped on your line. Sell it, Rick.
No, I don't need to sell it because we got to move on.
Well, wait,
I'll tell you one
650,000 Texans have experienced. There have been 650,000 crimes committed by illegal aliens against Texans.
In what time period?
I don't know the time period, but I know
Texas has what, 30 million people?
Yeah, but 650,000 crimes that didn't need to happen.
Well, but that's a 2% crime rate per capita if Texas has 30 million people.
Okay.
And if that is over a period
I'm just saying, every one of those rapes and murders that occurred in that 650,000 are your fault, again. Because you can't countenance stopping illegal immigration.
What about
I mean, this thing with the caravan, it goes back to that. I'm concerned about the caravan. You're not, because you just do the math and say, well, there's 330 million American. There's only 14,000 illegals in the caravan.
There's never been 14,000.
There's not 14,000. There's less. So we should just let them in, right? And give them all hearings.
You know how many times just tonight, I've said, don't let them all.
Then why don't you vote Republican? Because the Democrats are silent. The Democrats.
No, they're not.
No, there is not. You find me a Democrat senator that says, God damn it, we've got to rush the military to the border and stop this invasion. You find me one Democrat.
How about if I just find you a shitload of Democrats who say, just enforce the normal border policies that we have?
The normal border policies would be not one single one gets in because none of them are refugees according to international law.
So fine. So give them a quick hearing if that's the case.
No, they don't get any hearing. There is no hearing. They're not refugees. They're in Mexico. They're safe from Honduran gangs. You're in northern Mexico. Well, the Honduran gangs are thousands of miles below you.
Mexico, I don't know what Mexico's normal policy is.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're offering them asylum.
Mexico's offering 3,000 of them asylum.
Okay. But it's not our problem. Look, let me ask you a question. Can you find on the internet machine a Democrat that says, we got a real problem here. We've got to stop these people from getting in? Find me that. Because I don't think you will. And I'll tell you what this means. This means you should vote Republican.
No.
Why not? You want to enforce the border.
We have border enforcement policies.
No, we don't. California's a sanctuary state. Do you know what that means, Rick?
It means that if you run into legal trouble.
No. It means if you get here and you're illegal, you have found sanctuary. They will not send you back. They will not inform ICE. They will not imprison you. They will not send you back. You're here. That's it.
Okay.
Done. Even if you commit a crime, when you get released from prison,
ICE.
They won't tell ICE.
They won't hand you over to ICE.
You're on your own.
Yeah.
So you're not a Democrat. If you believe in border enforcement, you're a Republican. You should vote Republican.
You're making it as if Democrats want an open border.
Yes, that is what I'm saying. In fact, there is a film. There's Hillary Clinton made a speech in 2004 14, I believe, or 15, in Brazil. She was in Brazil for God knows what reason, making a speech, and she said, "I believe that the Western Hemisphere should be borderless."
Fine,
ideally.
she's not president, and
but she's your standard bearer.
not anymore.
Well, find me a Democrat that wants to close the border. Find me a Democrat that wants to build a wall.
99% of Democrats, according to the last survey, the only survey I saw, do not want an open border.
That's Democrats like you, not your leaders. Your leaders want the border open.
No, they don't.
Prove it. Find me one. Find me one. Let's take a break. Let's find a Democrat that wants to close the border.
Really?
74.2 or so. All right, so this is from the New York Times in, I think, July. Fact checker, fact check of the day. No, Democrats don't want open borders. Trump has falsely claimed at least 24 times since taking office that Democrats want to open American borders. But legislation shows the Democrats support border security measures, though not the border wall he wants to build. And then you go down and
Can you talk a little louder?
okay, all right, okay. So, Democrats also consistently supported border security measures before Mr. Trump took office. In 2013, every single Senate Democrat voted for the so-called Gang of Eight immigration overhaul bill that would have provided about $40 billion for border enforcement, including deploying thousands more agents and building 700 miles of fencing. The House never voted on the bill. I don't know why.
I have a fact check on that. Here's Lance Richland fact-checking the lying New York Times. The Gang of Eight plan that all the Democrats loved, that was going to legalize millions and millions of illegal aliens. So yeah, of course they were going to go for that. Think of all those millions of new Democrats they could have got. That was not border security. In fact, the Republicans said this is garbage. The Gang of Eight, one of whom was Marco Rubio, he probably lost the nomination against Trump because he supported that. It was a disgrace.
All right, so then the next paragraph is, in 2006, 26 Senate Democrats voted to build 700 miles of walls and fences on the southwestern border.
Exactly, including, at that time, Obama was against illegal immigration. There's a speech of him saying in 2005 that he's against illegal immigration. But the thing is, but mysteriously, the wall never got built.
But no, there's 650 miles of wall
It's
already.
completely ineffective. It's not. It's deliberately porous, and furthermore, that's the
Who says it's deliberately porous?
Because they just have ladders. They just climb over it. I mean, don't take my word for it. The Border Patrol is saying this fencing is useless. That's why they voted it in. That's why everyone says we need a proper wall.
All right.
I mean, so now let me rephrase the question so that we can get more current, because we're up to the minute here. My point is that this caravan is coming up, and the Republicans have staked a position. They are saying, we want to stop this caravan, and Trump has authorized 800 troops to be sent to the border. Now, there are no Democrats that I'm aware of, and I'm asking Rick, who's a very smart man, find me Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi.
All right, so you've
saying, no, we need to stop them.
All right, so you've kind of changed what you want from me.
No, but that's kind of, I mean, maybe that's what I'm, all right.
So, because...
That's fine, let's take another break.